Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. With the voice, Milt Thompson. Delivering the best of sports programming. Interviews with top celebrities. And the answer to the question, where are they now? And now, Milt Thompson, Playing for Keeps.
Welcome to Playing for Keeps. I am your voice, the host, Milt Thompson. Thanks again for watching, everyone. God, we had a lot of comments about last week's Super Bowl show, and people like, Michael Irvin, are you serious? I got a chance to interview that guy, and of course, the cerebral one, Devon McDonald, was on our great show, Where Are They Now? So we kind of knew where he was, and we've had a fantastic response from all of you. Thank you for shooting me a message about the billboard that you saw. And my daughter's saying, my dad's on a billboard? I said, are you kidding me? Some people thought I used to be on a dartboard, but that might be a little bit of a different story for everyone. But we've enjoyed doing this show because I've gotten a chance to get caught up with friends from a long time ago. And we've had a chance to just sit around here in the studio and just chat about what they've got going on in their world. And everyone we've got here are star makers. And if they're not stars in their own right. And thank you, Jiffy Lube, and Steve Sander. I mean, what kind of community servant is he to say we're going to join right in there and we're going to pitch in on Playing for Keeps, and E-Spot Spas jumped right in there, and Blicky Dillon Crandall jumped right in there, and going to be bringing along Hope Training Academy and other folks out there, and you know your names out there that you really want to participate. This is the best value you're going to get, WHMB Channel 40. So I would lock in and say, come back next Friday night and check us out. 9 p.m. every Friday night for some of the best in sports programming here locally as well as around the globe. Now, I've been kind of known to give everyone kind of a little nickname that, I dub them. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it does. But today is really, really a appropriate name for the Super One that we're going to get a chance to chat with here in a few moments. And I think Kelly said this is the first woman we've had on the show. My goodness, what's wrong with us? We've come back from the same coaching tree that really was led by women. So this is not going to be a secret when we talk to the Super One, Allison Langton. You come right back here after these short words here on Playing for Keeps.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
And welcome back to Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson. Thank you for tuning in every week at Friday night from 9 o'clock p.m. here on WHMB Channel 40. And we've had venerable people, we've had gregarious people, we've had cerebral people. Today we've got a super woman today, and that is in the name of Allison Langton. Allison, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to see you.
Well, so good to see you. I mean, we go back a little bit.
We do, a long time.
It seems like it's been that true with everybody we've had here. We go back a little bit. That says something about me, maybe. We had Mr. Cinematic, who was on here. Mr. Gerald Harkness was talking about the game of change and his dad, who passed away a long time ago. But he would remember he was my paper boy.
Oh my
Are you
gosh.
forgetting me? It's now who's talking about who's old, who's been around. So that's another story for a different day.
Yes.
The story for this day is someone who has actually arisen to the top of fame in our city, has done so many things that some people say it's behind the scenes, but she's really out front. That's why she's the Superwoman. Some people have a Wonder Woman. We've got the Superwoman. And tell us about your background coming up through the Sports Corp days when we were the coaching tree of Sandy Knapp and others. Tell us about that, Allison.
Yeah, that's as long as I've known you, way back in the early 80s.
Exactly.
I was in Colorado working at the U.S. Olympic Committee when Indianapolis started moving all these sports organizations here. So I actually feel like I'm a product of the sports movement here. So I took the job in Indianapolis at USA Gymnastics, one of the national governing bodies that was moving here, along with 7 other NGBs. In the early 80s.
It's called National Governing Body.
Yeah, yep. Been here since 1983, and I've just loved Indianapolis ever since, and would never consider moving anywhere. I worked at USA Gymnastics for 13 or 14 years, then I went to the Sports Corporation, where you were on the board, and was there for a long time, 20 years in total with the Super Bowl stint. So it's been wonderful. And Sandy Knapp absolutely was an inspiration for me, not only to at the sports court, but to move here, because I met her in Colorado.
Right.
And she said, there's amazing things going on in Indianapolis in sports, and if you ever want to really have a career in sports, you should move to Indiana. So I credit her with getting me to do it.
Well, you're going to have to lean on her a little bit. We're going to get her on this show here.
Okay, good.
And we do a Zoom if once in a while when we have to get somebody who's not willing to come back to Indianapolis even for a short stint and doesn't match up at the time we do our taping for our show. But we'll get Sandy. So you come before her.
Okay, well, she's remarkable, because at the time, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there weren't a lot of women in sports. And she had a very prominent position, and you know her well. She's an incredible salesperson. She loves the city and the state, and she really was incredible at recruiting people and bringing them to Indiana.
Well, she did a great job of bringing people to Indiana, as well as cultivating people from Indiana.
Yes, absolutely.
I was a young sports lawyer back in the day in the late 70s, and they had this thing going around called the Pan American Games, and ultimately ends up that she is the vice chairman of the entire organizing committee, and then she brings along a couple young lawyers as general counsel for the Pan American Games. And she had a lot of sayings, but taught me a lot.
Yes, she's a great teacher, great mentor. I was still in touch with her all the time.
Right.
Her.
She was head of the Pacerettes at the same time that my cousin was first Miss Black Indiana. So they go back and they do still think that they teach me things, which is okay.
Yeah.
We let them believe that. But you're leading her because you've led so many organizations, as well as governing bodies, as well as working with organizing committees.
Yep.
Tell me about some of the organizing committees and the major events around Indianapolis that you got involved with before you had this special moment with the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so as part of the Indiana Sports Corporation, one of the things I loved about working there is it's a full community effort. And you need all the volunteers and all the civic leaders to pull these host committees, local organizing committees together to really put the best foot forward for the city. And Indianapolis does it better than anybody in the country. And I can say that because with the different jobs, I've traveled all over the country and been to these other major cities that do sporting events. But we perfected the model here. And so getting civic leaders to volunteer their time, to contribute towards the planning, the execution, the awareness to all these events has really been sort of what I would say is our secret sauce. So from Pan Am Games was one of my first big events that I worked on, and I loved that. We had 37,000 volunteers for that event, which is a lot of people.
That's the secret sauce right there.
That is the secret sauce. For Super Bowl, we had about 12,000, and so again, you get 12,000 people that come forward and volunteer their time. It makes a huge difference, and it makes the visitors feel welcome. It helps with the actual execution of the event, and so forth. So I think our city does it better than anywhere else.
Well, the civic participation, as well as the business participation, as well as the philanthropic community, is an odd mix in some places.
Yes.
They're a little oil and water.
Right.
Tell us about your experiences with the various sectors that we have here in central Indiana, Indianapolis, and really around the state to be able to make these things happen.
And it was it was always good, but during Super Bowl, when we really pulled everybody to the table and perfected the way that we were working together, and I feel like it's even stronger now. So for the corporate donors, for example, we raised all the money for Super Bowl before the bid. And we got everybody to the table and said, the only way we're going to get a Super Bowl is if we can secure all of our corporate donations first. And that took a lot of trust and confidence from all the companies in town. And then sort of same with the government officials and the philanthropic institutions. Lilly Endowment, of course, has been a huge contributor over all these years. So getting everybody to the table and formalizing more how we work together was really a benefit from the Super Bowl, even though we were all doing it beforehand. But again, this city's different in the way they look at it, that if everybody comes to the table without all their own individual agendas and can come and say city, state first, not what's best for me, not what's best for my company, but city and state first, that's why we're able to execute all these things.
Well, we had a bit of a cottage industry that has produced leaders in all kinds of institutions, like you say, around the globe. And it just comes off the top of my head. Jack Swarbrick, came out of that movement, and Fred Glass came out of that movement. And we can go on and on and on. The Susan Boffmans have come out of that movement, and the people that have really gotten their hands dirty, but not afraid to take the front lines. And there's no job too small.
Right. And the reason that's all been able to happen, I think, is because of great mentors. Jack had Ted Boehm as a mentor.
Right.
And Sandy Knapp, she had a whole crop of people
Right.
that she was mentoring. So the fact that we have leaders here, Jim Morris included,
Right.
that will spend time and help mentor and teach the younger generations the importance of how we do things in this city, why they're important, what legacies are for sports here is as important as what's going on the field of play. I think that's why we've been able to have this cascading of leaders continue, because
Right.
we had people willing to help.
I think the generational piece is really, really essential because sometimes you think you get power by holding on to it.
Right.
You don't.
That's right.
You maintain and get great status and get billboards if you start giving your talent away, right, folks? Okay.
Yeah.
No, you pass it on. I remember
Right.
the great Rick Fusen, who's now the chairman of Patriot Sports and Entertainment. We were sitting around and we were just, where's that next generation of leaders going to come from?
Yeah.
Because in the old days, quite honestly, Allison, it dropped down
Right.
and they tapped you on the shoulder and they would say, why don't you go be on that board? Why don't you go do that? Why don't you do that? Well, now they have to spring up
Right.
through other networks. And then you have to inspire those people to help go along with the story.
Yeah.
But with our superwoman here, how did the bidding and after the bidding and go in terms of implementation of you rising to be able to lead that group in terms of its staffing for the biggest event that we've had here since those multi-sport event deals?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think back, I can't believe it's been 10 years. 10 years, some days it feels like it was yesterday, some days it feels 20 years ago.
Right.
But I worked on the 2006 bid in 2006 for 2011, which Fred Glass led. And we lost that bid to Dallas.
Toss it to Jimmy.
We did. We did. Jerry Jones. We did.
Bought us out.
He bought us out. So we lost that bid and came back and sort of licked our wounds and regrouped. And then in 2008, February, we went again for 12. And Jack Swarbrick and Mark Miles were our community leaders for that bid. I worked on that bid. And so I had 2 years of mentorship under Jack and Fred and Mark, which was great. We got it. So May of 2008, we got the bid for Super Bowl, and then we had 4 years to work on it. And people say, how did it take 4 years to plan anything? It absolutely took 4 years.
They don't understand.
Rolling up your sleeves every single day, working hard for a number of us. So yeah, it took that whole 4 years. The bid process was interesting. The NFL's changed it a little bit now. But I couldn't have been happier.
Well, some serendipities involved in that by not getting the one the year prior. Well, Dallas had terrible weather and terrible problems. But we, because of wonderful weather, I think it's more about our leadership by having the Super One in charge. She got her little red phone out and she got it all connected up. So the Superwoman led us to a fantastic event. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that event and also about what she's kind of doing now too in her next big time job that she has out there at the Motor Speedway. But anyway, this is Playing for Keeps. I'm your host, Voice Milt Thompson. You come right back after these short messages.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
Welcome back to Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the Voice Milt Thompson. We're talking with a superwoman here, the one who led the unbelievable, successfully wonderful Super Bowl that we had here in Indianapolis. She told us about the bid, and she told us about the conglomerate of parts that she pulls together to make all this happen. We talked about the cottage industry of people that have kind of grown on and done other great organizing things, and she's gone on doing great organizing things. But that Super Bowl itself, the feelings that you had after those meticulous 4 years of hard work and things kind of, you're worrying about how the cold weather and in February and you're wondering what's going to happen and voila, boom, you pull off the magic.
Well, it was the whole community that pulled off the magic. It's interesting because that 10 days we did have amazing weather. People remember that it was beautiful every day. We did have a couple days we had to shut down the zip line because the wind was too much. So we had a couple challenging days, but for sure the majority was wonderful. It was a remarkable week for the city because we had as many activities for residents as we did for visitors, and we had over 1 million people come down to the village that week, which is was a lot of folks. And the NFL was really happy with the whole event. We did a number of things they had never done before. It took us some convincing to get them to agree. The Village was one of them.
Right.
The former Super Bowls prior to Indianapolis were very spread out. Phoenix is very spread out. Miami is very spread out. So they were intentionally decentralizing everything to not create crowds. And then we said, but that's our strength. We want to bring everybody together. We want to have a nucleus of energy similar to the Salt Lake Olympics, which I which I went to. So we tried to create that, and then the NFL loved it in the end. And now every city, they want that. So the best compliment is when the NFL asks other cities to be able to do, what a former city did. So that was a big compliment for us.
There's some talk about the NFL being a little bit greedy. I mean, they come in and they pretty much put down all the rules and take all the money out. But there has to be an economic model that's workable for the city. I think at the time of the Super Bowl, I was serving on the Capital Improvement Board.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, whoa, my goodness. Are people going to ask us, did we make money or lose money? I mean, that's not how you measure that.
Right.
Because if you were to ask Leonard Hoops and others and Ryan Bond in terms of the industry that we have here, economic development pieces, how did you enter that, and what was your calculation about how it is those negotiations with the NFL and others were relative to our own economic stability?
Yeah, it really was a negotiation with the NFL. And in the end, our economic impact for the event far exceeded what we spent on it. And so really the challenge is providing venues to the NFL without them getting fully charged for all the venues. And so being on the CIB, you would know that. But in the end, clearly, we made out economically as a city.
Right.
And I still see some of the Craig Hughes at St. Elmo's and the Phil Ray at the JW Marriott. They all say clearly the Super Bowl was the most successful financial weekend they'd ever had. And I just actually heard that CFP was second in the last couple of weeks. So,
Susan Baldwin will have to tell us about
yeah,
that when we get her on
I know.
here.
So while there is a lot of requirements in the bid, in the end, there's no doubt that the city benefits from it. And so particularly in our case, because we had the corporations donating money ahead of time, we were able to secure those donations. So we knew what our budget was and we could plan from that. So we weren't sort of searching on trying to raise the money as we went.
I remember my days in kind of working with those kinds of large organizations that are driven in large part by television, electronic media, sponsorships, they're advertisers, they want to overlay, and then the local people have their kind of pieces, what goes with that. So what's your view of how all that worked and how we contributed to it as an organizing organization?
We did a lot of things at the Super Bowl that had not been done before. And if we think back 10 years ago, digital media was just sort of coming up. So we had the network broadcast and the different parts of the commercial part of the Super Bowl, but also this rising digital and social platform. So I would tell you that we took huge advantage of the fact that we could be on the front side of pushing digital in a new way commercially. So we worked hand in hand with the NFL. We had more shares and likes at that point than any, now it's like something that just rolls off our tongue like it's a normal thing. It wasn't 10 years ago. But I do believe strongly that we helped put the NFL and certainly companies that were involved with us commercially and digitally on the map and gave people a lot of opportunity. Tech companies that were here engaged in Super Bowl were hired by several cities after us who said, we saw what you did in Indianapolis, help us do that. So it really was a great benefit.
Well, there's a lot of legacy in it, right?
Yes.
The Superwoman was involved in a legacy program that has now become really a template for how other cities make their bids on a Super Bowl. Tell us about that legacy program, because that really engages that other sector of philanthropy.
Yeah. We did a project that the NFL, frankly, couldn't believe we could get done. We took the Near East Side of Indianapolis and reinvented the neighborhood and put a $12 million legacy center there that serves the neighborhood still for now and will continue to for a long time. Because we always felt that the Super Bowl was more than the game. Whatever happens on the actual field of play, the NFL is going to take care of that. But what can we do that's going to surround the event with things that are longer lasting and legacy for the city? Back to Jim Morris and Ted Boehm and Sandy Knapp, always saying that is absolutely important, that the city gets a long-term legacy. So the Near East Side of Indianapolis, $150 million was corralled and spent on the Near East Side, and the residents there are still enjoying those benefits today. We also did a breast cancer project, which I was really, really proud of. The Komen Tissue Bank in downtown Indianapolis is the only place in the world you can donate healthy breast tissue for science. And we had 1,000 women donate breast tissue through that 2 weeks of the Super Bowl.
Another super event from a superwoman.
Yes, it was called Super Cure.
It's Super Cure. So the Superwoman, most people would say after riding off into the sunset and have a successful Super Bowl, I'm going to take a deep breath, but you just keep on ticking. You are now engaged in other large events with Penske. Tell us about that and how you kind of moved into that.
Yes, so a couple of years after the Super Bowl, Mark Miles was the CEO at the time was Holman and Company, which is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway IndyCar Racing Series and our television production company, IMSP. And Mark called me and said, we have the 100th running of the Indy 500 coming, and you've been involved in every major sporting event in the world, and you haven't worked on the world's single-day largest sporting event in your own hometown. So you need to come out here and help us plan that. So I did, and I've never looked back. It's been wonderful. I've been there 7 years and started out just, again, overseeing the 100th running, which was the first time the Indy 500 has ever sold out. So that was historic. And then since then, I've gotten involved in the whole business, IndyCar and the racing part of the sport and everything. So I'm really enjoying it.
Well, getting to work with Mark Miles talks about your experiences. He certainly has experiences. We'll get him on here. I think at the largest events that Indianapolis has had, he's had something to do with.
Exactly.
Probably led them. That 100th running is one of them.
Yep.
Super Bowl and leading that was another one. He
And
was
the Pan
American Games. I was his general counsel. We've done a little traveling. One thing Sandy Knapp said, what goes on the road stays on the road. So I've kind of learned that from both of them, and we just leave that stuff for further conversations down the road. But if you're talking about premier things that you do and responsible for there with Penske now and the Motor Speedway, what are your top responsibilities and how do you delegate that throughout the wonderful people with whom you work?
Yeah, when Roger took over, so 2 years ago, January of 20, he consolidated a number of different parts of the business and then moved me into a role to oversee for both IndyCar and IMS, all of marketing, communications, content development, partnerships and sponsorships, and HR. Actually have HR right now too.
So you've got some people that you kind of brought along with you that are over there. Tell us briefly about some of those folks and how it is they help support the Superwoman.
Well, it's a small network, right? You remember Ellen Saul?
Absolutely.
So Ellen Saul, who's worked on a whole bunch of events in the city. She's just wonderful. She's with us and doing an incredible job.
Right.
Doug Bowles, the president of the Speedway, is just a class act. I love working with him. And then Jay Fry is the president of IndyCar, and he's doing a great job. Clearly, IndyCar racing is the most competitive racing on a track. And we've got a lot of great young drivers right now. We kick off our season here just this month in St. Pete and should have a really exciting year. And Elio Castroneves, he's going for number five this year.
Number five. In our last minute or so here, Allison, tell us what the pandemic did in terms of shutting down events. And how we escaped from the Super Bowl and how we've had some stickiness to us with the Motor Speedway.
Yeah, so the pandemic, like with all sports and entertainment, shut things down for a number of months. We were able to get the Indy 500 off in August with no fans of 20, and then last year we were able to have a race at 40%. So we are looking forward to a full season with full capacity this year. Well,
the brainchild of so much of this stuff that goes on around Indianapolis, men talk about it, women do it. And we can think about no one better to have on our show here than Allison Melanchthon, Superwoman. Thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy busy life and schedule to join us here.
Well, thank you. It's always good to see you.
Delighted. Always good to see you as well. And we want to know, because I'm glad you guys are glad to see us. So you're going to show up again here next Friday night for another version of Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson. We'll see you then.